Ladies and gentlemen, inside the Trump administration right now, there may not be any shortage of chairs, but the people sitting in them seem increasingly unsteady. Looking at the chain of recent developments, one gets the impression that this machine no longer resembles a government operating with stability, but rather a political stage where figures step into view, are criticized, and then shoved backstage so quickly that the audience barely has time to remember their names. The first sign of this wave of upheaval was Donald Trump's firing of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. Reuters reported that the decision came after months of controversy, including the killing of 2 American citizens by federal agents in Minneapolis, and fierce criticism surrounding the way she ran the Department of Homeland Security. Trump then selected Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullin as her replacement. Put simply, the White House seems to have switched into replace someone to relieve the pressure mode, and Noem was the first one told to get up and surrender her seat. If Noem's departure was enough to stir Washington, the next shock was even more obvious. Pam Bondi was also removed from her position as Attorney General. Reuters confirmed that Trump dismissed Bondi and installed Todd Blanche as interim replacement. The reason, according to sources, sounded very familiar in Trump-style politics. She was not fast enough, not aggressive enough, and failed to match the pace Trump wanted, especially in highly political cases. To put it bluntly, in a system where loyalty has to move faster than the law, Bondi simply failed to accelerate in time. And it did not stop there. Reuters also cited reporting from The Atlantic, saying that discussions are underway inside the White House about the possibility of Kash Patel leaving his role as FBI director, even though no final timeline or decision has yet been made. At the same time, Pete Hegseth is facing harsh questioning from Congress over the war with Iran, the military budget, and a whole series of transparency issues, which means one man may not be out yet, while the other may still be in his chair but is clearly not sitting comfortably. In plain terms, in that room, nobody should be too confident they will still have their seat next week. And then came a name that is less visible on television, but has risen rather quickly behind the scenes: Josh Gruenbaum. According to the Wall Street Journal and the Daily Beast, he is an official who came out of the GSA procurement system, was at one point linked to Doge, and then managed to wedge himself into foreign policy files thanks to his close ties with Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. He reportedly had a hand in discussions involving Gaza, Russia, Ukraine, and Iran, and even appeared in high-level diplomatic photos. It was quite a leap, from buying pencils and managing government contracts to standing near Putin and talking about Middle East peace. Very much Washington in the Trump era. If you are bold enough, every boundary of role and function can be bent. But the faster the rise, the faster the fall. The Daily Beast reported that Gruenbaum has now been pushed to the sidelines, stripped of sensitive foreign policy work, and reassigned to a more marginal role, farther from the White House, both literally and politically. The paper described him as being effectively cut off from the center of power, with some sources suggesting that his habit of excessive self-promotion had rubbed too many people the wrong way. The gentle phrasing would be a change in assignment. The more honest Washington version would be, from being ushered into meetings with heads of state, he is now shoved into a corner, where, if he still wants influence, he may first have to rediscover the door back in. And the problem does not stop with his style. The Wall Street Journal reported that Gruenbaum has also come under scrutiny over ethics questions involving the fintech company Ramp and a $25 million pilot contract. ProPublica had previously reported that Ramp was seen as a leading contender for the deal and had multiple early contacts with GSA, raising questions about favoritism and conflicts of interest. Gruenbaum denied wrongdoing and said he had recused himself from any related matters. But simply having his name attached to such a sensitive contracting file was enough to make him the perfect candidate for the role of fall guy when the White House needed to clean up its image. It is a very familiar script. When things are going well, you are the rising star. When the stage lights change color, you are instantly recast as a risk that needs to be managed. Looking at the whole picture, what is happening is not just a series of separate personnel changes. It reflects an administration in which Trump seems to be growing increasingly impatient with the very people he chose himself. Noem pushed aside, Bondi removed, Patel rumored to be on the way out, Hegseth squeezed by congressional hearings, Gruenbaum shoved to the margins. That list does not create the impression of a government tightening its formation for efficiency. It looks more like a convoy rattling apart because it has been driven too fast, too hard, and is now having to take itself apart piece by piece to see what can still be used. And perhaps this is the most telling part of all. The more people get pushed out of the circle of power, the clearer the larger picture becomes. Trump does not seem to be actually solving the crises. He is mostly dealing with the people standing closest to them. The Middle East is in chaos, so someone has to take the hit. The Justice Department does not move the way he wants, so someone gets replaced. DHS generates too much backlash, so someone gets removed. That style can create the impression that the president is taking action. But at the same time, it exposes another reality. When an administration has to keep replacing people in order to explain away failure, then perhaps the problem is no longer with any one individual. Perhaps it lies in the way the whole machine is being run. To put it briefly, if you look at it through that distinctly American style of sarcasm while still staying grounded in reality, the Trump administration right now resembles a political train still barreling forward, but with the sound of loose metal rattling louder by the minute. On the outside, they still try to project decisiveness, but on the inside, people are being moved out, replaced, put under review, and dragged out to serve as padding for the blow. And when an administration begins spending too much of its time explaining why it had to replace its own people, that is usually no longer a sign of strength. It is a sign of a machine that is tired, irritable, and increasingly unable to hide its fractures.